All right, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our fourth and final keynote for the day, Shelley Pisarra. Shelley's the EVP of in Strategy and Insights for Wasserman, does great work. Really, again, we talk a lot about, we started the day with our first keynote with Pete Giorgio from Deloitte, finishing the keynote part of the day with Shelley, and really thinking about thought leadership. I know Shelley's going to talk a lot about something we talk a lot about in class. I won't ruin it, but I will turn it over to Shelley Pisarra. Thanks, Shelley.
All right, thank you. Hi, everybody. We're in the home stretch on a Friday afternoon when it's 60 degrees in New York City in the fall. This is probably one of the worst positions to be in, especially after free hats and tickets, my lord. So I appreciate the amazing setup. Thank you. We'll do some extra research on your fans. It's all good, I promise. So, especially that new train line going to UBS. I will say people are excited about that. So, with that in mind, Shelley Pisarra. I've been at Wasserman 6 years, leading the Insights organization in its various stages of development. We started with a really tiny group, and then we branched out. We brought analytics, insights, strategy, and media together in one, figuring that if we're going to know everything about our consumers, we probably should figure out where to reach them with what message in the most relevant time, right? So, like I said, I've been there 6 years. Prior to that, Russ knows this and a handful of other folks, I spent 20 years on the brand side of the house. So making decisions on where we were going to spend brand dollars, innovating new products. I was the one who brought you the SpongeBob Ice Pop with those black gumball eyes. You were welcome. We had a great partnership with Nickelodeon, so that is one of my claims to fame. I also worked on Ben & Jerry's for 3 years and gained 15 pounds I haven't quite been able to get rid of. So it does work both ways. But all of that experience led me to Wasserman in a way that a lot of folks said to me when I was leaving consumer products. Nothing was going wrong. I was at PepsiCo, working on our big NFL deal at the time, which was a 10-year deal, $2 billion, kind of unheard of. And they're like, what are you doing? Why are you going to an agency? Why are you leaving a brand? And I was honestly a little bored. It was kind of the same process, the same retailers, and those of you who've been on the brand side or you'll get to know it's a really small world. Sports is small too, right? But it's a really small world, and you're just kind of transitioning brand to brand, selling to the same retailers, which makes it really comfortable. Yes, it was hard. Yes, there were new things to do. Yes, you had big pricing decisions, spend decisions, lots of data to consider. But one of the things that I noticed in my role as I was working on the NFL and wearing a brand hat, Wasserman was my agency, and we were really struggling to reconcile performance. So were these dollars working for us? And did we believe the data that the NFL was giving us? And as a brand, very protective of advertising dollars, and especially sponsorship dollars that at times are tough to measure. We were like, I don't know. I don't know if we believe this. We need to build our own model. And this is back when Repucom was separate from Nielsen. We used Repucom, we built a model that's around that, and it just was super complicated. We were speaking one language, the league was speaking another, Wasserman was speaking something in between, and I thought, I really need to get in this. I need to somehow be involved in kind of bridging this gap, right? And so, I talked to Elizabeth, spoke to Casey, and boom, I had a job. Terrifying job, big, wide open space, and I think we've done a good job at moving closer together. We're not all the way there, and we will get there, and I'm not going to talk at length about that, because who wants to talk about measurement? You guys want to hear about a few cool trends and how they come to life in business. But the point being, it's really about the storytelling and using data to support the story you're trying to tell, make the point you're trying to make, the big sale you're trying to make, the big investment you're looking for from the president of a company. And if you don't nail that, you can't chase your fans, you can't see what's next, you can't bring Mr. Ledecky the next best thing to engage his fans at their first home game, right? So we're gonna weave that in underneath. So it's a keynote that's gonna have a couple fun things in it, but we're gonna stay on that lesson of how data-driven storytelling is actually what's revealing the future of sports and entertainment to us. And without that, it's a lot of data in a really confusing world and a lot of people fighting over who can make the most money. So the fans control our destiny. I think we all know this, right? If at the end of the day, a team is selling for $2.5 billion. It's not just about that team and the infrastructure around it in the arena. It's actually about the action that you want a fan to take and all the ways that we monetize against them. And that's everything from, he was talking about, Mr. Ledecky was talking about the Bolin family. Their very long, drawn-out process of not being able to make a decision on who was going to run the team and how it was going to work led then to it going on the market, being for sale, and everyone looking at all the assets and the valuation that was built into it. Someone down in there was saying, what is the action that they want from the Denver Broncos fan and every other bit of associated assets and points of engagements with consumers, and what is that worth? And how do we figure that out? The fan, in the end, has to be considered, whether there's a separate room with billion-dollar deals going on or not. At the end of the day, we need people to have irrational passion, irrational spending at times, frankly. We all do it, for this to be as meaningful as it could be. So we have to kind of keep that in mind as we're telling the story. So not only do they control our destiny, but we need to understand the full ecosystem. So playing off the Bolin example, I love it when there's a good speaker right before me, so I can use that example instead of my boring one, is there's an ecosystem well beyond the Broncos. There's an ecosystem well beyond the Clippers. There's an ecosystem well beyond the Lakers. There is ownership and opportunity in the venues. So Mr. Ledecky talked about UBS. There are concerts, there could be political rallies, there could be family shows. Suddenly you've gone from having 1 million, I'll just call it 1 million, I don't know the number, Islanders fans that you're trying to monetize to you are looking at the entire tri-state area and the role you can play in meeting their sports and entertainment needs, plus a whole bunch of other ancillary things that could be housed in that venue. The value of a property or the value of the opportunity in meeting that fan's needs just grew exponentially. Think about that. You're now planning for the future. You're now planning for the fact that we know fans want it all at once. You want to have the best music, the best experience on your phone live, and be able to make a little money on it, wagering now, at the same time. And there has to be a way to pull that all the way through the system. But we cannot lose sight of the fan. And data is only part of the answer. It's only a point or a series of points. The storytelling is what really unlocks the opportunity. The storytelling on the future of the convergence of sports, music, food, art, all of culture coming together, and how Gen Z wants to experience it. How do we do that without alienating the middle-aged fan who's been there for a long time? See how careful I was with my words there? I thought, do I say old? Do I not? How do we do that? Very carefully, first of all, as a former brand dad. You do it very carefully because they've been really good to you for a really, really long time. But you have to start thinking about what's next. How do you sell your organization on what's next? You find the data to build the story, and you tell the story. You paint the picture. You sing a song. You create a piece of art. This is where art and science come together. We need science. We need data. We are constantly, honestly, looking at which tools and subscriptions we should be putting into our kitty, if you will, spitting out the old, stale, too stated, too generic, too standardized, looking for as real-time, as emotional, as qualitative as we can get to add that richness to it, because we have to be able to paint that picture. Because this decision is made in the context of many other decisions, whether you're going to get the money to invest. If I'm with the Islanders, I'm going to get the money to bring a new idea, maybe build something from scratch in a brand partnership, which I'll show you an example of something we did for American Express at Wimbledon, and any other decision in between. Data's just a vehicle. It's part of it. It's an input. The storytelling is critical. When I came up here and told Scott that this was like my underlying message, he's like, oh my God, we talk about this all the time. And I hope you really do. And I hope you practice it. Because I have to tell you, finding people who know how to mine data and then can get up in front of a room and talk about it and paint a picture and realize what a trend looks like or how to bring multiple data sets together, it's really hard to find. It's kind of unicorn-esque, frankly. And if you can crack that skill, you can be amazing in partnerships. You can be amazing in mergers and acquisitions. You can be amazing at anything. Being able to put data to work and then paint a picture that no one really needs to see how that sausage is made, they just trust that you've done it, will really take you a long way. So the chase is on. Let's talk about fans for a minute. Let's talk about things that have gone on in the industry. This next generation, God, are they elusive. They're hard to find, they're finicky, they love lots of things. You know, the one thing that happened over COVID is the pie got bigger. The pie of everything we could choose from and how we would engage actually got bigger. You might believe that at face value, you might say, wait, didn't sports shut down for a while? Didn't music totally shut down for a while? It did, but we all had to find new ways to engage, which meant those ways didn't go away when live came back. So I now have a different relationship with music artists that I care about and follow because I had to work really hard at it when I couldn't go to a show. I now have a different relationship with how I follow the Knicks because I had to work harder at actually getting to know the players when they weren't on the court. Just two examples, but because those things didn't go away, you're now competing with all of these other touch points when you're trying to talk to a fan. When you're trying to talk to this next generation of fans, they're like, hey, wait, I actually am going to tell you when I want to hear from you. I'm going to tell you what I want to hear about, and then I'll decide if I'm going to spend money with you. And that's totally cool, and that's okay, because every other facet of life, you're able to do that. And in sports and entertainment, we now have to figure out how do we create environments, experiences, points of engagement that cater to that without breaking the bank, frankly, and or diluting the value that exists. There's more of everything. Like I said, the pie got bigger, everybody's relative slice a little bit smaller. Think about this for perspective. In the absence of something, maybe something you had your whole life and then one day it's snatched away. You're like, man, I really missed that thing. I love that thing. That was my thing. By the time you get your thing back 2 years later, you've learned about 50 other things, and maybe that thing, you still like it, but you don't love it. I'm not going to spend 2 times, my disposable money on a week on it anymore. I'm going to spend 50% because now I've got these other hobbies. I've got these other things. So with the more of everything, how do we figure out where we fit? And if you think about the layers just on a single sport viewing experience, you have fantasy, you have betting, you have AR, VR, and I'll talk about that in a second. You have forms of just communicating and watching from a communal space. We worked on WinBet when Win was launching their online betting system. It was the Ben Affleck commercial. You guys remember that kind of coming out? We did a bunch of research going into that. And one of the biggest reasons people like online betting and online gaming is because they can do it with their friends. And especially in a time of COVID, when you're not gathering places, doing big watch parties or whatever, you're still communicating with each other and you're kind of going in on something together. That insight in and of itself, this is a visual from StreamLayer, if you guys are familiar with StreamLayer, but essentially kind of layers of experience that they're able to put in on the top of stream matches, games, whatever. And that insight itself led to capabilities inside each of these technologies. Well, I have to make it so that the 5 of you could actually be talking to each other while you're wagering, right? You could be talking to each other when you want to see some sort of AR filter and have that experience together because the communal nature of it really, really mattered. That could have been a standalone data point, but when they built it into the overarching story of why these layers of engagement matter, you can start to talk about loyalty, advocacy, coming back, commercial value, monetization to the next degree. So more of everything isn't necessarily bad. You just have to understand how to use it to your advantage and make sure that you're engaging at the right place, the right time, and on their terms. Let's talk about Fanatics for a minute. Fanatics is, I think, fantastic. Fantastic in the sense of kind of amazing what they've become, right? They started out as an e-commerce company, essentially a data company at its core. E-commerce company that helped you buy merch and other facets of the experience online pretty seamlessly, pretty inexpensively. They have an insane amount of scale that they've built over time, but they became the backbone of most of the apparel across the big leagues, right? Now think about everything else that they've invested in. And they just appointed a new CFO for their betting business, so they have betting, they have content. Michael's now walked away from his team ownership because of the betting piece. They have 3 or 4 or 5 other facets to their business. And what they actually have become is a data company that has some of the most insane, in-depth, holistic views of consumers and where they will irrationally spend money to supplement their fan experience. And it's in sports today, and it's going to be well beyond sports, in the long term. And there's even some of their businesses are moving there already. But if you think about a company like Fanatics, what they're going to be able to do in the future by really flipping and putting that consumer view forward, the data-driven stories they will be able to tell, not just to support their businesses, but frankly to help properties, teams, brands navigate the consumer mindset when they're truly engaged with something they're wildly passionate about, I think is amazing. It's not even a part of their business that they're thinking about right now, right? Michael's done an amazing job going out and picking the folks from organizations on the brand side, the team side, the property side, the world of finance, and then a bunch of data and analytics folks that are now building this team, that if you can flip this around, and it would become a source for I'll pay for your data. Let's use it, right? We do work with them on a handful of things, but I think it's an example of figuring out where the power is in the information that you have and being able to take those data points, turn it back into opportunity, not just in selling in the exclusive lead deals, but longer term, selling in the potential opportunity that exists across fans and consumers globally. Clipper Vision, a little bit of a flip here. I don't know how many of you have heard about this. You guys heard about this, what Steve Ballmer's doing? I think you guys all understand how media rights work, and essentially when the big media rights deal gets renegotiated, the money gets split, right, between the players and the teams and so on. I think what's really interesting here, and it's not, Steve Ballmer's in a position where obviously he doesn't have to be totally panicked about launching something and it's going to break the organization, right? He's done a great job of building his entire ecosystem. What I think is fascinating here is he's like, you know what? I'm going to come in with an opportunity to control yet another touch point with my fan. I'm going to own the data. I'm going to own the relationship. Yes, there's still a local deal, so they're kind of doubling up now to test this and see how it goes. I'm going to understand more about how you want to, so there's actually a lot of facets to this. How you want to see the game, other ways that you want to engage, and look at the branding and the partnership with AWS too, which I think is totally fascinating. Spanish and Korean broadcasts, really catering to that market of Southern California, and being really, really clear that you are in control here for the low, low price of $1.99. And in a world where owning something like what Fanatics has, that complete holistic view, you're now seeing teams, properties, big entity owners saying, I need to own more of the ecosystem. I need to own more of the ecosystem to control the touch points with my fan base, but also to understand what they're going to want next. So learnings from this can be applied to if he gets his new venue and they're running other entertainment through it. Why not? You learned a lot about how people like to see and experience things here. So I think fascinating examples. One started as a data company, spread and actually can kind of spin it and sell it back. And I think here he's taking some control of the action as well as control that relationship directly with his fans. One number up here by itself doesn't mean a whole lot, does it, right? Like, that's a pretty big number. What is it? 1.7 billion people around the world are using AR to supplement an experience that they have, either just for general entertainment or kind of complementing, I should say complementing, not supplementing, complementing music and sports. That's insane. That is a huge number. We don't usually just start out with 1.7 billion, but very quietly, in a lot of the confusion around the metaverse, what it is, what it isn't, and really understanding the benefits of AR, VR, MR, and the opportunities that exist there, 1.7 billion people have said, I actually want to have an experience that's slightly altered or in another universe unto itself. What the heck do we do with that? Right? How do you propel an organization to say, it's not just about the live experience and the 17 digital things we were forced to add, right, mind you, over the last 3 years, but now I have to think about reskinning the entire thing so that you can live it out in the first person. Pretty intense. And a lot of data-based storytelling is required, right? So it's everything from, this has been out there for how long? Samsung's had this 6, 8 years, 10 years maybe even. It started here, but it really ends up at something like this. We did this with American Express in Wimbledon. The last 2 years, we created full virtual hill experiences. Has anyone been to Wimbledon and been on the hill, right? It's pretty fun, isn't it? It's amazing. The demand for people to be avatars and to have that experience when a ticket to Wimbledon and even access to the grounds, especially the last couple of years, is so hard to get. This was wildly successful and a total blast to be able to do. You could create your avatar, you could actually have products seated, you could go up, get a beverage, do your entire thing, if you will. Have that experience as whoever you want to be. And that didn't stop you from actually watching the matches. You were doing that and this at the same time. It didn't take anything away. It actually added a layer of loyalty, advocacy, and frankly, excitement for what at times seems to be a bit of an unreachable or out of touch tournament. But 1.7 billion people and a conversion rate, when something's on Shopify and it's actually been prompted through Shopify after being in the AR, VR experience, this insane 90+% conversion rate, right? That's kind of bananas at that point. In context, while you're having an experience, you're immediately prompted. It's like the old days of shopper marketing. If you hit me on the aisle at the right time with your graham crackers, s'mores, and marshmallows, I'm sold, right? It's just evolving. It's continuing to evolve, but we need to stay on the front end of it, and we need to put the pieces of data together to create an experience that works. And Amex is excited. They're going to do this again. Last point I'm going to make. The women's game is now undeniable. Did this happen overnight? Oh, God, no. Not at all. Just this week, a couple days ago, I don't know if you guys saw this, FIFA rejected the bid for media rights. Can you imagine this happening 2 years ago? Bid was too low. They said, go back, try again. The women's game is worth more. FIFA, I'm just going to leave it with that. FIFA said no, right? It's amazing. And I think some of you know about the Wasserman Collective, where we work on the women's business, right? We are laser focused on bringing equality, representation, and just awareness to all facets of women in sports and entertainment. With people running around the office crying. This is unbelievable. But we didn't get here overnight. It took a village, a ton of data and storytelling, and a whole lot of money we had to follow, right? And there are lots of stats and facts up here, which individually might be interesting. This was in one of our first decks that we sent out around the collective. And then we realized we didn't need to lean on these as much because we had mastered the art of painting the picture of the opportunity. And it wasn't like, hey, wait, there's 5 more people interested, there's 7 more people interested, there's 10 more people interested. We had painted the picture of opportunity, and we could put this away and focus on that story, and they were trusting us that we had done the homework, that we were ready. That wouldn't have happened had, frankly, the cycle begun. A couple of good stats come in, someone invests, you end up with more airtime, and there's more awareness around the women's game. You have records being broken in attendance over in the UK for the Lionesses. Insanely amazing season, right? And the attention being brought, helped kind of create the swell that, all boats were able to rise from. My point being that individual statistics are one thing. Painting the picture of a story that can lead to this and lead to deals being renegotiated for women at 6, 7, 8 times their value prior is a lot of data, a lot of love, passion, and storytelling that goes into it. One last fact, I was talking to our head of sports on the talent side. The pace with which women are getting new deals in our business, and I think you all know, Lindsay Colas is, I would say, hands down the most badass agent in the industry, period. But she represents all of our WNBA players and all of our Olympians. And the pace with which women are signing new deals and or advancing their deals is double than what's happening on the men's side of the business. Men, don't be alarmed. There's still a lot going on there. I gotta tell you, we were starting from a low base. And that's fantastic. but it means we did a lot of storytelling, we did a lot of measuring. We're moving away from the comparisons. We're making sure that people understand that this engagement and this opportunity matters, that being able to participate and have the privilege of airing these matches is worth more. And it's storytelling that opened these doors. Cool? Anybody have any questions?
I have a question in regards to your Amex example. I think monetizing the metaverse is kind of still in its infancy. So I'd love to know with a client like Amex, who's accustomed to like traditional digital measurement, how are you measuring this campaign in terms of like KPIs and success?
Yeah, so in terms of measurement with respect to this, there was a whole layer of like core engagement that we had. And what we were looking at, and the one thing with Amex is because we do work so closely with them, we could actually track with respect to their members and their most loyal members who were accessing this if they opted in, what this experience did for them on top of the other experiences. What we were looking for, because we did just base measurement on traffic, engagement, length of stay here, sharing. So that represented an advocacy target. But then overall, afterwards, did essentially a satisfaction survey and looked at the folks who did engage with it on top of actually engaging with the matches overall or the tournament overall. Their general level of satisfaction and frankly, their general level of awareness, advocacy, understanding, familiarity of the Amex brand. And it was fantastically higher. So a great experience. You're still dealing with a small base. I'm not by any means saying everybody who's ever wanted to have a Hill experience did that, but for those that did participate, it was markedly improved in terms of overall experience. Yeah, but we had to layer it together because you had to understand kind of the base that you were working with. Cool? Thank you, everybody.